welcome to School After Hours podcast, where we talk about all things related to our school time programming. I am your host, Jay Lee, and on today's show, we're going to have Dr. Sonia Toledo as our guest. She is the founder of Dignity of Children, a wonderful program that helps students create businesses that can help their community or issues that they see around the world. Not only giving them ideas to help the community with their businesses, but also how can they scale their business. I thought it would be a great idea to have Dr. Toledo on the show so she could share with us her experience of being a counselor for an after-school program and then going into making her own program for students. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into our Community Corner first, and then we'll go ahead and get into that interview. Community Corner is a segment of the show that allows guests or myself to share tips, advice, or information with families, youth, and community members about the OST field. All right, so Dr. Toledo, for our Community Corner, my question is, what are 3 things an after-school program needs to do to thrive in its community? 3 things.
Wow. Okay. So that I'm going to have to really try to narrow this down because it's very in-depth. So thank you for having me. I will start with really understanding that it takes effort to create community. Community has to be an intentional effort for everyone. So what that looks like is that we have opportunities to come together and have dialogues that are important to understand what consists of our community, right? So the community of an after school it's a gathering of families that are belonging to your neighborhood, right? So we need to know the culture of all of our families and understand those cultures. And the only way that we could understand them is by having dialogue with them, right? So we need to be in the room with our families and our children and just get to know each other, to break down any of our barriers that are keeping us from somebody different from us, right? So building community requires dialogue, communication, understanding. And I am such a great promoter on beginning with every community is diverse. And there are different people, different backgrounds, from ethnic backgrounds to economic backgrounds to, racial backgrounds, experience backgrounds. Our experience brought us to where we are today. So as an after-school provider, I really feel that we could spearhead and lead this conversation and bring parents in, do activities with our young people so we could know each other, we could learn from each other and do some real deep exploration about our culture and own our culture, but then yet be present to where we are now, whereas our new community that we live in now, own that culture as well and be able to embrace everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Toledo, for sharing that wonderful information with us. Now, let's go ahead and get into our interview. Well, thank you for dropping those gems, Dr. Toledo. So we're going to go ahead and jump into the interview questions and know a little bit more about you and your journey. So, Dr. Toledo, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you began your career in out-of-school time programming.
Wow, good question. I would say I never did anything else because I tell you, when I was, I think 14 or 15 years old, I got my first job as a summer youth employment in New York. And I was fresh-eyed, just like, hey, I'm going to get a paycheck. And
That's how we start.
And I remember a really quick story. We were at the pool. I was working at a YMCA at the pool with hundreds of kids. It just felt like that. Hundreds of people. It was chaotic. I really didn't know what to do with myself. So I was just sitting around the side of the pool, just, minding my own business, not really knowing what I was supposed to be doing as a job, but I was there, right? And then I see this little boy struggling in the water. like he was drinking water or having a hard time, a real tiny little one. And I grabbed him and he was flustered and very, scared. And I took him, I dried him up. I sat him next to me and I comforted him. And we just sat there for the rest of the time. I talked to him. I honestly didn't know at the time that I should have told somebody or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But I realized after he calmed down, I took him over, to my boss. Mm-hmm. And I told him what happened. And then, the day went on. And then later on that day, my boss came up, my supervisor came up to me and said, you have a real knack for being with children. And I want to thank you for doing what you did today. You did a really good thing. You handled it perfect and he's okay. Mm-hmm. And I was like, hey, all right. I got something here. I never left. I have to tell you, I never left. I did leave a couple of times. I pretended to be a nurse, a medical assistant, and no, blood in me didn't work out. Yeah, I think I was doing that for 3 or 4 months. I was like, I'm doing this. I've always been in either youth programming, early childhood, school. I've always worked with children my whole life since I was 14.
So in the process, you found your thing. You were able to find this thing early. Right. Some of us don't find it till later, i.e. me. Some of us don't find it till later. So once you knew this is what you wanted to do, how did you begin going through your process of getting to where you wanted to go? Did you ever think that you'd be sitting at the table and being the CEO of your own organization? How did that process happen for you?
Well, thank you. First of all, when I went to my master's program, I did my master's in human services and I did my thesis on high-risk children in underserved communities and focus on the benefits of an after-school program. So I think that's when I really started seeing this as a clear profession where I become an expert and understand how after school is so valuable to our communities and contributes so much to our young people. So moving fast forward in probably 20, maybe 30 years ago, I went from direct service, which I did 15 years prior. I'm going to put 20 years prior because I started at 15. I went from counselor to supervisor to coordinator to director to multi-site to VP. I mean, I'd done all the positions. And then I started doing training and development. And that's where I was like, I love this. I love the training and development field. Back then, I was working for Childcare Inc., and I was responsible for training all of the directors and teaching them how to get their permits and all the regulations. So I created all kinds of trainings to support them in managing their after school environment as a leader. So fast forward, I saw in New York that training and development for line staff was lacking. So we did a lot of training for directors, but there were very minimal opportunities for the people that were on the floor, on the ground with the young people. So that's what had me start Dignity of Children in 2008. I created a program called the Development with Dignity. And that program was a site-based model where I would go to the after-school programs and train all of the staff together on the fundamentals of working with children in an after-school environment.
Nice.
And here I am.
And that's amazing because, like you said, when you are in these positions, as far as being a frontline worker, you're in the classroom, you're with the kids day to day, there's not always opportunities for you to do professional development because you may not have access to professional development fund as a frontline worker. If you're full-time salary, that's one thing. Some organizations are required to do a certain amount of hours, some not all. But if you are a part-time worker, you don't always have that capability or that access, or sometimes you have to be okay with coming out your pocket to pay for it to sharpen your skills.
Well, also the value of training and development during that time, it wasn't embedded in the institutional structure. right? So when you think about how after school came about, it was 3 hours after school. I'm going to hire somebody for 3 hours after school. It's like, let me hire you and put you on the floor. Very little time for saying, oh, let me hire you, let me train you, and then put you on the floor.
Right.
And we're still not doing that. You follow. Now we have systems, and it depends on where you're at. Here in New York, we're required to train everyone in 9 topic areas for 15 hours a year. It's required in order to maintain a permit. So as we've moved forward, many states have their own requirements of training for their line staff. But again, that's structures that are embedded in the institutions that support development of the individuals that work with children.
Right. And that, like you said, like that's important, because the last thing you want to do is to be like, oh, you're hired here. Good luck. Have fun. What are we doing? And that's how you have the high rate of turnover. That's how you have the self-burnout. The learn as you go process is a struggle, and it's not something that's always, so I do not support it at all. There's some things that you do learn as you do, but you should have some background knowledge in order to do.
Yes. Yes.
So in creating Dignity of Children, like what was the concept behind it all? I know you have the professional development portion for those that are, working with youth, but there's a business aspect that you have for children to implement their own businesses and do kind of like modeling, a plan, like they do the whole thing. So when did that concept for Dignity of Children come about, and how did you get stakeholders invested in supporting that concept?
Oh, absolutely. Let me just first start with my vision and mission for Dignity of Children is to create environments where young people feel safe and fully self-express so they could thrive. And where did that come from? That came from my own experience as a child, struggling with academia, being diagnosed as learning disability. I basically felt that the one area that I really struggled was self-esteem and self-worth and feeling safe emotionally, being bullied, being chastised for not learning or not being able to read as well. So in my own self-experience, I realized that what I'm up to is creating educational environments where educators create a culture that, one, our children feel safe emotionally, and two, our children are able to express their talents, their style, who they are freely so they could thrive.
Right.
So moving fast forward, I've done a lot of trainings for line staff. I've done trainings for directors and supervisors. And then in the last 3 years, we created a curriculum for entrepreneurship. And that's when it started sparkling for me. I was like, okay, wait a minute. So entrepreneurship allows our young people to come up with a business idea to solve a world issue and implement it in their own community. So we started as a model where it's like a Shark Tank format. So bringing business people and experts to judge the business pitch of our young people allows our young people to be validated for their ideas. And not only that, but to start understanding is like, oh, wait a minute, I got something here. Like that same spark that I got and knowing that I had something with training and development, regardless of how bad my spelling is, I was like, I could do this. I could do this. And I was able to overcome any obstacle, academic obstacle, including getting my Ph.D., to know that whatever my idea was to solve an issue in the world is what drove me to be where I am right now with my company, Dignity of Children, and to get my Ph.D. So I want that same experience to all of our young people as young as kindergarten. Like we could give it to them. We could give them that experience of having that aha, like I really want to make a difference in this area because it matters to me. And I'm going to develop myself to see that come alive, no matter how that looks. So since then, we've created various curriculums from climate change, financial literacy, health and wellness, urban farming, community organizing, and the latest art as a commodity, NFTs. So our focus is to support teachers and educators to learn how to create a self-directed learning environment where our young people are driving the curriculum. They go deep in learning a certain topic, an issue, a world issue, and then they come up with a solution. And then they come up with a project and implement it in their local communities. So through that, they explore careers, they do deeper research with the topic they're talking about. So they get to actually talk to experts and interviewing them. They get to read articles. They get to do surveys of the population they want to make it. They start real life process and making a difference in their community, which then validates their worth, validates their sense of purpose. Especially when you're in service, you get to feel great. You get to feel good about yourself. That's what I'm up to.
So it's the kids having that reassurance and that validation, like, hey, like my idea counts. My idea can definitely affect my community, and to provide that service, having them, go back to the idea, like it takes a community. If you take care of your community will thrive.
And I get to do that. You know what I'm saying? They get to do that. They get to own what they're up to. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a real driver for building a life that they desire and deserve.
Mm-hmm. Now, this being a new idea, not so much new, but shopping this around to get stakeholders invested in an idea, like what was that process like and what were some of the challenges that you faced? Because I know it's like you show up with this grand idea and they're like, I don't know. Question mark. I don't know if I want to buy into this. So how did you begin to make it appealing for stakeholders to be like, okay, I want to invest in this, but also give them a little bit of a bigger role of being involved in the process of like being part of the panel to look at the idea so they could see the potential that the youth have?
Yeah, absolutely. So we got a small fund from the Department of Youth and Community Development from New York City. We got funded for 3 years straight to do the entrepreneurship model for middle school and high schoolers. So that gave us like a good test run, right? So we had a test run where we trained the staff. The staff went back and did the program with the young people. And then we did the sharks, what we call Young Sharks competition. We brought in professionals and experts to be in the judgment, and we wrote rubrics. So we had a lot of tests running. And then we also, during the pandemic, we test run 2,000 young summer youth. And because remember back then, they didn't have a place to place kids. So we needed to keep them occupied for 25 hours a week so they could get paid.
Right.
So we then designed 3 other curriculums and had summer, at that time it was Summer Bridge, and we served 2,000 young people. And I have to tell you, at that point, when we gave the young people a choice of what curriculum they were interested in, over 50% of them chose health and wellness, because health and wellness was where they were impacted the most emotionally because of the pandemic. So I do promote giving choice to young people in which direction they want to go. And then our challenges has been the pandemic. We got to use the technology. So we pivot, and instead of it being in person, we started doing online. We created a whole virtual conference. It's called Gather Town, where we actually hold a symposium on a virtual platform, and we're able to serve like hundreds of young people at the same time for them to do their pitches and their presentations to experts. Our biggest challenge has been getting organizations on board as a opportunity to strengthen their project-based curriculum.
Okay.
So even though we have trial and error and we have a bunch of data that says young people are actually learning 21st century skills by doing this, we are still in the process of getting organizations and schools to buy into this model, because that means we have to change the way we teach. So
everybody
that
pivot.
No, don't tell me how to teach. I've been teaching for years.
Right.
The way it's worked all the time. What do you mean I have to push? I have to step back and let them lead. What are you talking about? You're telling me let go of my control. But it's not only that, it's the style of facilitating a child-directed classroom requires us to do a lot of prep work. So everything is available for them, and then they just take it and run with it. It doesn't mean that we are losing control. It just means that we set it up differently, where we're not actually teaching, they're actually discovering. You see the difference?
Right.
So putting resources available for them to continue to discuss and discover what is it that they want to understand and learn.
Right.
So the deep learning concept comes from my desire to really know about mental health and bullying.
Yeah.
Like, what's the cause? Why is this happening? Maybe I want to focus on cyberbullying. Let me get some data. What's the data say about cyberbullying? What are the results? What are the impact? Let me talk to some of our young people. Let me read some articles. So as a young person, having that drive to want to know about this particular topic, then after I get all that information, I get to say, you know what? I have a solution. I'm going to be a spokesperson. I'm going to start my own podcast and talk about cyberbullying. You get what I'm saying? We have middle schoolers. We have fifth graders coming up with these brilliant solutions for our world issues. And I'm so excited about this project. And my thing is, no matter what challenge is in front, just keep it moving. Just keep it going. Keep it going, keep it going, keep it going till we get it right.
Right. But you did mention a good thing about being more student-led than teacher-led and giving the students the choice, as you say, which at school programming, we all about choice. We all about choice and relinquishing your power, and know that it's a discovery for them and supporting them in that discovery instead of leading them in that pathway of what you want them to discover. So that's a different avenue. That's a different level of humility. And that is a different place to be but once they're there, it's a beautiful thing because their drive for it is like nothing that I've ever seen. It is like nothing I've ever seen. So that is the amazing part. And, as an educator, being okay with it, like, I just need to facilitate this conversation. That's it. I can't give you the answer. I got to talk about it. I got to talk it out. You got to talk it out. Yeah, talk it out and take notes.
And here's the fun part about it is when you actually pivot and start creating a child-directed learning environment, it's easier for the teacher. It's so much easier for us, but we don't know the benefit. Like when we work out, we don't know the benefit until after we work out, but the hardest part is getting to work out. So this is how this works. We have to uncomfortably get to want to shift on how we approach teaching. And then the after effect is when we say, you know what, this is actually working out.
Right, this ain't bad. This ain't bad.
They did all the work.
Right, pretty much, yeah.
And I didn't have to know the content as much as I thought I was supposed to know, because we discovered it together.
So, in building out these other parts of the curriculum, getting stakeholders invested, do you see opportunity to go ahead and start creating internships for the students that are doing their projects, and after going through the Shark Tank portion or the presentation portion, like helping the kids get to that point of seeing they actually come alive and breathe? Do you find that more organizations are investing in that process? Because for my thought process as a stakeholder is, if I know this child's work at middle school and high school, I'm more than willing to invest, because this is a person that I build a rapport with. I can validate for who they are as a person, but also I can validate for their work and see their potential. So long run, I would see a benefit of that type of relationship and that type of investment. Have you seen some of that doing your projects?
Well, two parts. We've done the competition at a larger scale for Northeast states. So we recruited young people all in high school last year.
Hold on. Sorry, Dr. Toledo. So how far do you expand in this process? You just said Northeast. Like, where are you on the map? I just want to know.
Technology takes us everywhere.
Oh, all right. Oh, that's the sauce. Okay.
We started New York, and then we piloted Northeast. So we got young people from New Jersey, Pennsylvania, up north in New York and Connecticut to participate in a competition last year. Okay. It was around 20 young people. They all designed their own teams, and we turned out to have 6 teams. In January, we did a competition where they pitched their idea for the first time to business owners or investors. And then from the pitch, all of them got cash awards from $2,500 to $500. And some of them, for the next 6 months, they were mentored by a business professional for their business idea. So for the 6 months, they've been mentored, and now they're going to showcase their business idea again to a group of about 15 business people. But my excitement is that we're teaching young people to continue to learn how to pitch their idea to as many professionals as possible so they could bring towards them resources and partnerships. Mm-hmm. So you have business owners and it's like, you know what, I'm going to connect you with so-and-so. Or you know what, I had one person actually create a website for one of the groups. And he's committed to continue to help them maintain that website moving forward. So he's like a lifetime for them. So, we're at the tail end of this whole process, and I really do see the results, and we'll have, the recorded results on our website so you could see as well. But here it is. I'm really committed to having a global classroom where corporations, business people, and experts get involved in being a support system for our young people, especially those who have a clear direction on making a difference to the world as it is today.
And that is a key point of the power of networking. Not just the power of networking, but the power of community, like being in the room where you can meet people, share your ideas, make your presence known, but also practice social skills as well. Yes. All of those things are wrapped in this opportunity.
Yes.
So my last question for you for the interview is, what impact do you see Dignity of Children having on the children and the communities you serve now compared to when you started?
Well, when I started, I knew I was making an impact because I was having directors and supervisors understand, the best practices of after school. Mm-hmm. But now we're in a different age where in our culture of out of school time, that it's about embracing our communities and supporting our communities and being the solution versus, being the problem, right? So
Right.
I think right now my impact is really supporting this shift in paradigm and how we see our purpose, that is not just about maintaining and supporting young people to be safe during the after school hours, but it's about supporting and encouraging and giving our children permission to be brilliant, to be the world's solution change makers. Unfortunately, a few years ago, I would have said it's not fair to put this upon our young people because they should be children. Right. But now, and this is very emotional for me because our world, it's such in turmoil. And we cannot pretend that our young people are not feeling this. The way they heal is being in service. And that's my message. Let's all heal. But let's give permission for our young people to give us the ideas that we can't come up with, but they have them because they have a fresh eye, a fresh perspective of the world, and they still have hope.
Right.
So I think that's where my heart lands, and the difference is in the work that I do is having that message.
Well, the second part of that question is, where do you want to see Dignity of Children in the next 5 years?
Oh, definitely global. We're going to be a global company serving all kinds of educational environments and transforming educational practices to really meet our young people's desire of self-actualization.
Yeah, awesome. So thank you, Dr. Toledo, for doing this interview. We have one more portion to get through, and that is our Professionals Lounge. So everybody, let's go ahead and jump to that portion, and let's get into our Professionals Lounge.
Professionals Lounge is a segment of the show that allows guests to share advice and tips with other practitioners in the OST and youth development field about how they can begin growing their gifts and talents, but also develop themselves as professionals.
So Dr. Toledo. So for Professionals Lounge, I have a question for you. My question is, what professional advice would you give people that want to open up their own program? What kind of guidance would you give them to make that happen?
Awesome. Well, we are in need of all kinds of diverse types of programs, right? So the first thing I would like is for you to find for yourself, what is it that sparks you, lights you up, and be very clear on that purpose, because from that purpose, create a specialized kind of environment for those young people that are attracted to that specialty. So I think, nowadays we have after school be more like a cookie cutter, like all of them look the same. So I'm looking more like, let's be different. Like I'm going to focus more on fashion. Let me attract those families. Let me attract, maybe, the arts or whatever moves you. Believe me, there are other people out there that want the same thing that you do, and just trust that your idea is going to flourish and you're going to find those families that want to be part of your community. Be very clear on how you're designing your community. What are the outcomes that your kids and your families are going to have? And those are the people that you're going to attract. And stay focused on that. Do not divert. Do not conform to the other stuff. Conform to be clear and stay true to what you want to do. It's going to just be an amazing environment that's just going to continue to attract the community that you are interested in serving.
Awesome. And my last one for you, for the frontline people or the people that are interested in doing this work, what advice would you give the incoming generation that want to do this hard work, this after school programming, and want to make a career out of it? What would you tell them?
Well, first of all, it is a career. It's not just a pass-through job. And you have to be committed to your own self-development. You have to be committed to your own leadership. I mean, it's almost like an entrepreneur going on their own business journey. Like, you never stop learning. Be a lifelong learner. Self-development is critical. And I'm going to quote Miss Oprah. Oprah says the most important job you have on this earth is to develop yourself. Focus on self-development, self-reflection, self-actualization. And that's how you know how we're going to do it with our kids. Because until you know how to take care of yourself, you won't be able to take care of our children. So I would say just be committed to yourself and believe in yourself and just take the baby steps that are necessary. Every little step counts.
I know that's right. Well, thank you, Dr. Toledo, for dropping those gems, giving us that wisdom in that cheer. Yes. So, Dr. Toledo, go ahead and share your information so they know how to get in touch with you, and go ahead and check out your program.
Well, absolutely. First of all, you could go to our website, which is www.dignityofchildren.com. Or you could also find us in www.empoweredbyyouth.com. There you will see our learning management system, which we have asynchronous training and we have synchronous training for educators. And we have the curriculums that you could take on it. We also have a free membership, so you must join us. And most importantly, join us in our social media, all of them at Ideas by Youth. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, everyone, that brings us to the end of our show. I'd like to thank Dr. Toledo for being an awesome guest. This was a great conversation, and hopefully you'll be able to come back in the new year so we can continue to have the chat. If you enjoyed this episode and feel you received some good information, give us a review on Apple Podcasts or visit the Podchaser website and leave us a comment. This will help us get some feedback on the show and collect testimonials for our website. Share us with your friends, your family, your network. Help us spread the word about out-of-school time programming and how it's inspiring our community as well as our youth. We can be found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. Well, that's all I have for today. In the words of Mr. Arthur Ashe, start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. Until next time, bye-bye.